Good morning and welcome to day 3 of the um, Olive IELTS intensive. Today we will be covering the second half of the writing exam, which is task 2. And then in the last hour, we will be working on the speaking exam. So thinking hats on. There's a lot of work to be done. And let's get underway. Please don't hesitate to jump in with questions or contributions as you can. Right. So, yes, the writing exam, as we said last week and the week before, the writing test is 60 minutes. There are 2 tasks, 150 words for task 1, 250 words for task 2. That is the least important piece of information about the exam. The amount of words are absolutely the last thing you want to worry about. If you fulfill all the requirements for that task, you will have written more than enough words to cover that, to fill that requirement, right? So the 2 things people always ask me about are, how can I write enough and how can I keep track of the time? And always I answer, don't think about either of those 2 things and you will achieve them. If you focus on the skill and the core of what the task is asking of you, you won't run out of time and you will you'll have written enough words. That's all there is to it. It's harder to write enough words if you put your pen on the paper and just start writing. It's easy to lose track of what you want to say and run out of ideas. So we're going to continue focusing on, in the writing, getting our ideas down so we've got something to write. Because if you've got nothing to write, you can't keep writing. So with that brief overview, task 1 was describing data. We're looking at graphs. Task 2, now you get to put in an opinion, and that's super important. Okay, so there's no opinions for task 1. Task 2, that's where you are asked to hold an opinion. Once again, I'm going to remind you of the marking. There are 4 criterion on which you are marked. Note that vocabulary and grammar are only 2 of them. These are weighted equally. Each of them is a quarter of your mark. So your ability to write a complete response that addresses all parts of the question, that's a quarter of your mark. Your ability to organize your response into a logical progression and to give the sign and to use the verbal signposts that say, I'm going to talk about this and then this. However, there's also that idea. That signposting is a big part of your coherence mark. And remember, those 2 are half your score. Half your score is understanding the question and writing in clear, well-organized paragraphs. So we're going to be focusing on how do you get there? How do you achieve that? So, and here's the big one. First step, analyze the question. That is the very first step. Then brainstorm ideas. Because when you first read that question, that's when you're going to have the most interesting thoughts about it. You may not believe me, but honestly, this is true. So the minute you read that question, there's going to be words, just like last week when the first thing I wanted you to do with that graph was to see, where does your eye go? Oh, it goes to the peak, it goes to that drop. Oh, there are all of the interesting spots. With the task 2, it's ideas. Where are the most important ideas? So going back to this, I just want you to see all the things that are highlighted here. Band 7 addresses all parts of the task and presents a clear position throughout the response and presents and extends main ideas. Band 6, same thing, maybe not as coherently, maybe not as completely. And in band 5, only partially expresses an opinion and addresses the task only partially. Expresses an opinion, but the development is not very clear. So you see that the difference between a 5 and a 6 is having that understanding of the question. Please stay muted unless you're contributing because of background noise. Thank you. So the difference between, so once, we all need a 6+ for our IELTS to get into the higher education world. So this is the key. Understanding that question is the difference between band 5 and band 6. And if we look here, logically organizes, band 7 logically organizes information and ideas, clear progression throughout, cohesive devices, and a central topic in each paragraph. Band 6, same thing, maybe not as clearly done. All right. So, and here we are down in band 5, some organization, but a lack of progression, inadequate use of cohesive devices, and maybe not even paragraphs. So I hope you really see that organization pushes you up. So can you get, this is how people get 5.5s when they haven't used all the skills to get full marks on these. You can have fantastic vocabulary and grammar, but if you don't organize your writing before you start writing, you won't get a 6 or a 7. All right. Doesn't matter how good your grammar is. If you can't move these up to at least a 6, you just can't get the higher marks. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to analyze the question. We're going to brainstorm ideas. Once we've got those ideas on the paper, we're going to organize them in a plan. And then, and only then, so about 5 minutes when you start this task, about 5 minutes of really deciding, what am I going to write and what order am I going to write it in? That is going to be the difference between that extra 0.5 that gets you into a 6 or a 7. And then you can write. What do we have to write? There are 4 things we need to write. We need an introduction. We need a main idea we need 2 body paragraphs, one main idea with examples, a second main idea with examples, and a conclusion. All right. And then if all of this has been done well, the writing went smoothly, you wrote in beautiful sentences, you knew what you were going to write, so you were able to focus on the quality of your grammar. And that's the key. So you then have enough time to check for some errors and you're done. And that's your 6 or your 7 on the exam. So the essay itself must have an introduction. All right. What does the introduction look like? In the introduction, you restate the question. You give your opinion or position, and then you should list the ideas, the topics of the paragraph that are going to support your position. Just mention them. Obviously, you're going to write more extensively about them. This is a way of signposting that will get you higher marks. You're telling them what you're going to tell them. My shorthand for this is in the introduction, you're going to tell us what you're going to tell us. Think of it as telling a story. You want to set the scene. This is the question, this is my position, and here are the ideas that are going to support my position. All right. Two main paragraphs. These main body paragraphs are going to be the explanation of the topics. Okay, so those topics. Note that I said state your position here. It is vital to actually, if you just pop up, it says a clear presents a clear central topic within yeah, exactly, a clear present. Oh, it doesn't have that one on it. Okay. It's stating and supporting your own position throughout the essay. All right, that's what we're looking for, is stating your position throughout the essay. And what's going to happen is you're going to be always referring back to this. All right, I'm going to just give that the green light too, and then list the topics. There are some online tutors for the IELTS out there who will not demand that you put your position in the first paragraph and will say, I do not like the essays that say, in this essay, I will be I will give the reasons for this in my essay. Of course, you're going to give the reasons for it in your essay. No, I am going to give this and this reason for it. And if you want to say in the essay, you don't need to. We all know you're writing an essay. Being self-referential that way, I don't think is useful. List instead the topics of your body paragraph. And then each of the paragraphs must be structured like this. It is vital that each of the paragraphs has a topic sentence. What is this paragraph going to be about? Firstly, I will address this subject. And then you have two supporting ideas. These I'm going to go ahead and highlight, but not in green. We're going to go for yellow with those. There's your two ideas. And it is also critical, the way you get more advanced language is making sure that you include supporting details. There we go. All right. So you have to have supporting details as well. I've not been consistent with my color scheme, but we'll have to do it. Now, notice there's one more thing that I'm saying has to be within a paragraph. What is this? So it's like a concluding sentence, but it is a link. It's the sentence where you say, and this, as you see, supports the position I have already stated. Or you see how this supports, or in conclusion of this paragraph. You don't usually use that there, but you simply in that last sentence say, this supports the idea that it is best to have it this way. All right. And then in your final sentence, your conclusion. Yes, you have to have a conclusion in task 2. You can get away without it in task 1. Oh, I'm going to just change these ever so slightly. Yeah, well, they're a little messy, but it'll do. Let's just highlight these and turn them. Yeah, let's go for magenta. 2 main paragraphs. Now, have you noticed that the introduction simply states what you're going to be writing about, what those 2 paragraphs are going to be, right? And the conclusion is going to be in conclusion, as you see, this is the only reasonable position to take because of this and that evidence, right? You put nothing new in the conclusion. You put nothing in the introduction that you are not going to cover in those 2 body paragraphs. So the only thing we have to plan, the only material that we have to come up with are those 2 main body paragraphs. Once we've got those, and this is why you can't start writing until you've made your plan, because the introduction is a summation of what you are going to say. Then you've got 2 paragraphs to say it and 1 conclusion to summarize once again what you said. So, introduction, tell us what you're going to tell us. In the body paragraphs, tell us and tell us. And in the 4th paragraph, tell us what you have told us. And then you have an essay. Right. So let's see what this actually looks like in real life. Oh, I forgot to put the timeline. Right. So the first step, analyze the question. And here's the trouble. It looks like a pile of words, doesn't it? So let's start finding the most important words here. In the question, they're going to give you some background information. All right. So the first thing you have to do is find the question. So the rising cost and decreasing supply of fossil fuels, such as oil and gas. Okay, such as oil and gas is an example, right? So our background information is the rising cost and decreasing supply of fossil fuels. Okay, oops. I don't think that needs to be so bright. We'll make that yellow. There we go. Such as oil and gas, along with environmental concerns, mean that their continued use as our main source of energy is impractical. All right, this is a bit key. So we've got there. We're going to take out some of the extra words and just say their use is impractical. Okay. So there we go. We've got our subject and our background. The rising cost and decreasing supply of fossil fuels is impractical. We should include the environmental concerns just for fun. So there we are. Alternative sources must be found. Okay, so we need alternative sources. And there is a really important word here. Can you see it? Whenever you see an imperative word like must be found, Is it an optional thing? No, it isn't. That is a key word. All right. Now, and that. Yep. I'll do that. The only realistic alternative is nuclear energy. Okay. So we've been introduced to nuclear energy. Is really our topic, isn't it? It's our real topic. And what's the important word in this sentence? The most important word in this sentence is only. So the only alternative, they say, and we'll turn, there we go. Right. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So you need to decide. So here's finally, we've gotten to the real question. Do we agree or disagree with this statement? It would not give me a very wide range of. There we go. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Now, what does the word extent mean? How much? Okay. Do you either agree? And now what are we agreeing to? We're agreeing to this. The only realistic alternative. All the rest is background. The only realistic alternative is nuclear energy. What are some other words for realistic? Realistic means something that could happen. Practical. And let's just call them fossil fuels. There we go. Right. So, and here we go. There's the instructions. Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. So again, you don't need any industry-specific language. You just have to write this from your own point of view. So let's take a couple of moments to look at, and here's another analysis of this. But I like this one because at this point, it's really good. So if you may notice, how much do you either agree that nuclear energy is the only practical solution to fossil fuels? Yeah, I've already started paraphrasing the question, haven't I? So that will be very useful to us in the future. Okay. So here's the point at which we can, I'm going to say, we've got to stay focused on the question, right? So if we look at this page, we've got the background information, which is the decrease. We need to get away from fossil fuels, basically. And they're saying the only realistic way to do this is to use nuclear energy. And we have to decide whether this is true or false, or whether we agree with it or not, and for what reasons. So what I want to do now is look at some questions and decide, are these statements that should be in our essay? Because we've got to stay focused on that. It's fossil, we've got to get rid of fossil fuels. We need something else. They're saying nuclear energy is the only way. Okay, so the question asks, which I want you to please type into the chat if you can. A T or an F? Do you think this statement should go into our essay or is not part of our essay? The question asks whether or not fossil fuels are impractical. Do we need to say that? Do we need to address whether or not fossil fuels are impractical? Is that part of the question? Can you give me a what? A yes or a no? Is this true? Does the question ask whether or not fossil fuels are impractical? Okay. And the answer to that is false. Okay. The question doesn't, thank you. The question doesn't ask, we're not asked, it states that fossil fuels are impractical. We're not asked to address that. We're not going to be talking about that in the essay. You should give a detailed description of how fossil fuels cause global warming. Should we be talking about fossil fuels and global warming in this essay? No, exactly. We should not. Okay. The question asks whether nuclear energy is a good alternative to fossil fuels. Should we be talking about whether or not nuclear energy is a good alternative to fossil fuels? Yes, exactly. That is what our question is about. Should we discuss arguments for and against nuclear energy? This one's a little bit fuzzier. Yes, we can. Maybe not as the entire focus, but we can. So, but that, and actually it's vital to our argument is whether or not nuclear energy is a good alternative. How about arguments for and against fossil fuels? What do you think? Should we talk about whether or not we should be using fossil fuels? And that's a big false and no. Okay, we should not be talking about arguments. Remember, they said at the beginning, fossil fuels as a statement, our background statement is that fossil fuels are not sustainable and we can't use them we need an alternative. So we're not arguing. That's not presented as something we should argue. That is presented as a background statement. Okay. So should we mention other alternative energy sources? We should mention other alternative energy resources. What do you think? Should we talk about other things, alternatives to nuclear energy? If we're going to say that nuclear energy is the only reasonable alternative, what are we going to have to do to prove that statement? If we're going to say that nuclear energy is not the best solution, what are we going to have to talk about? So this is true. Okay, we do need to talk about other alternative energy resources in order to prove whether or not, but either that nuclear energy is the best solution or is not the best solution. Yes, we have to talk about other alternatives. How about we should give a historical account of nuclear disasters? And I'm going to say, yeah, true, because it is an argument against nuclear energy. I agree. I agree. It's an argument against nuclear energy. And so if we're deciding whether nuclear energy is the best one, then that's the way. Now, I have found out of all of the ways to organize things, the easiest way is to use a chart. So this is good. This shows us we're focused. All right. The things that we've said false to, they are not part of our argument. If we include things that are not part of our main argument, it will take down the coherence and cohesion mark. All right. Staying focused on that question is our best way to get that coherence and cohesion mark. So here we are. And this is an example of how to generate ideas. Oh, I know what that, oh, right. So, sorry, this was an exercise for putting things in the right place. So we're taking these ideas and deciding whether they were pro-nuclear energy or against nuclear energy. And it's an easy way to decide which position to take and what to cover, because the more you can think of to go into these different categories, the easier it is to write. So once again, here we are, understand the question and organize the information. So let's take a moment to see what coherence and cohesion look like. We know how we're going to organize things. So see if you can work out. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do it. This is a little task on using cohesive device. I'm sorry. Using signposting in writing to give coherence to your connected writing. Right. So you will be able to download a PDF of this after the class from the file source that you've been given before. I'll make sure that it's there as well. So what I will do is encourage you to do this exercise after class. I'll try and get the PDFs loaded as soon as possible. And I'll try and make sure everyone's got the link before we leave the class. Because there's the answers. And notice, so these are coherent. These are the signposts that tell the reader how our argument is progressing. So that business about having a developed and progressive article, these are the language This is an example of the language and how to use them. So, so that's what we mean by coherence. Coherence is, first of all, it's an economical source of energy. Secondly, unlike traditional power stations, nuclear power plants don't pollute the atmosphere. Instead, however, otherwise, instead the waste is stored in safe containers. Furthermore, a move to nuclear power will reduce greenhouse gases. And finally, power stations have been shown to be safer. And as a result, nuclear power can potentially supply all of our energy needs. So you've got a beautiful paragraph describing why nuclear energy is best. Cohesion. Cohesion is tying these things together. Okay. Tying your words together with cohesive devices that link things, explain the relationship of things within your paragraph. And once again, I'm going to just go ahead and show you the answer because we don't have enough time. But do this exercise looking through the PDF and see if you can find such things in some of the other essays as well. So it is often said, for instance, it's another way of saying, for example, that nuclear power does not harm the environment, although it is true that greenhouse gases are not produced by nuclear energy. Mining for uranium causes real environmental damage. Moreover, many reactors use rivers for cooling. This raises temperatures in the water, causing harm to life. All right. Do you see how these words keep a coherence to the argument? You're progressing through the argument by linking the ideas together with these cohesive devices. All right. So let's get back to our plan. So here we go. We've got a couple of ways of coming up with ideas. Now, here's our paraphrased sentence. Although I agree that nuclear energy is the most reasonable. Oh, I really loved this argument. So here's our beautiful beginning where we're restating the question and putting our position in place. Although I agree, so remember it said, how much do you agree? Although I agree that nuclear energy is the most reasonable and practical alternative to fossil fuels, this only applies to rich countries that already possess the technology and resources to use it. Other alternatives are more accessible to regions with fewer resources. We came up with this in another class and it was really fabulous. I think it's a great point of view and it would be an excellent exercise to try writing this essay. So we've got our arguments for, which are reliability, proven technology, and if you don't have access to solar or wind, it's there. And over here, we've got the expense, the problems of building it, and the availability, the restrictions on the technology. So you see how that, do you think you could write an essay from what you see in front of you here? That's the important thing. So when you've got your plan, you want something that you can actually write from. So once again, writing the essay, work through the steps covered today, and try writing this one. All right, you'll have this in the PDF. Analyze the question, brainstorm possible ideas, decide which are the two sides that you're going to be arguing. All right. And however, there is a danger that IT skills are being taught at the expense of more basic skills to what to, yeah, this is a beautiful, do you agree or disagree? And I've given you a chart that you can start with. All right. Now, one more thing that's going to, that you'll be able to do in this, I want to take a look at. There's another really strong way of increasing the power, the clarity and the accuracy of your essays. And that is unwriting. So here's this beautiful essay. It's roughly an 8 on the band scale. And the challenge is, how did they get there? How did they do this? All right. It's wonderful to see an example essay, but then how do you do this? You can take any sample essay and unwrite it. What do I mean? Well, remember the progression up above? Remember we looked at putting ideas into charts? Well, here we go. I've read this essay and I've found the ideas. All right. I found the ideas. I understand the question that they were trying to answer. Sorry, this is really hard to read. Let me change that. There we go. All right. So there we are. They've analyzed the question. They've got two sides of the answer. National laws, the problem with national laws and the problems on the internet. All right. And so I've taken this, I've found all of these. And you can take mine and go back up into that essay and find all of those pieces. So then I've taken this. There's the brainstorming chart from that essay. And I did that by lifting these ideas from the essay. And then I've taken that and mapped out how they wrote it. Okay. So if you go through the two main paragraphs, you'll find that it covers national laws and the problem of legal monitoring of the internet. I'm sorry, I didn't read out the question to you. Well, that's the whole thing. You don't even have to have the question. The internet has transformed the way information is shared and consumed, but it has also created problems that did not exist before. What are the most serious problems associated with the internet, and what solutions can you suggest? So this is a problems and solutions essay. And they have suggested global laws. Global nature of the problems need global laws. And they've supported that by saying how national laws are inadequate and talked about the problem with anonymity versus privacy and suggested a solution, an internet passport. Okay, so it's wonderful to be able to read one of these and find the answers that they've come up with. So here we go. There's one of the problems. Remember, this is a problem and solution. And here we go. Some have proposed a system of identification. And let's see. Actually, in that first paragraph, you should be able to see that they've stated the problems and Okay. This is one of those sentences that I don't agree with. It says it's going to propose a solution. This sentence merely says, I'm going to do what you asked me to do, which doesn't add anything to the essay. So I would do that one differently. I would say the problems of illegal acts and the international nature of the internet. I propose that a global passport is the best solution. And then you've just got the essay to explain why. Okay, so that is not my favorite sentence. I don't like things that just tell you what the job is, because that's all that does. That tells you what the job was to write this. All right, so there's no doubt it's revolutionized. Yeah. However, societies have had to cope with unanticipated new problems, crimes, and which traditional laws are powerless to prevent. So this is really the meatiest sentence in this introduction, right? This is where they really do it. Unanticipated new problems, including crimes which traditional laws are powerless to prevent. So that's where they are going to be talking about the solution must be global, which they do down here. But I prefer, the thing is that if you run out of time writing this essay and you don't get to complete your conclusion, that solution needs to be up top, the global solution of using legislation and identification. All right. But as it is, and you'll see what I'd like you to do is go through and find the cohesive devices, find the signposts. Look at that beautiful one to begin with. That's a great phrase. All right. So look at those cohesive devices. Look at how they've built the ideas into this. All right. Doing unwriting will give you a stronger idea of how to get that level that you need, how to get that beautiful, coherent essay. All right. There are references here. IELTS Academic is my favorite for writing because it's got really clear example practice tests and sample answers. That essay is one of the sample answers. The British Council grammar site, I cannot emphasize enough how useful that is. They are short, they are interactive, they are super good. BBC 6-Minute English, just listen. They do lots of additional vocabulary, and good heavens, if you had to talk about energy sources, well, you know what? There's a section, there's a news program on 6-Minute English that will cover it and give you the language that you need to say. My file of practice exams and materials for this are in this Google Drive. Hopefully you will have, oh, you know what? I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to copy all of these right into the chat. And that's all of them. So my file of practice exams also has the sub-file of the IELTS intensive with all of these PowerPoints in them. All right. And extra materials. So that's there too. Make sure you grab these copy these links down if you can. I think there's a download button on the chat if you hit the whoops, it's not doing it to do. There you go. Oh, no, it's just doing that. Okay. you should be able to download the chat before the end of the lesson. Right. Let's go to a different screen and I'll show you a couple more of these. Just a reminder. There I am. Okay. Oh, stop showing. There we go. Right. Any questions? Any questions at this point? Any questions about how to approach it or what you need to do? For additional questions, you can email me here. Make sure you copy that down as well. If you have any difficulty accessing any of the materials or have any questions, please do email me there. I've got this new email, so I'm much better at responding now because I was finding that my main email was getting far too confusing. So I've set this up to cover us so that I can find you in amongst all the people who are writing to me. So hopefully you'll see that in the chat as well. Right. Well, if you've any questions further about the writing exam, once you've got that idea of what approach you're going to take to the question, once you understand the question and all the parts, and you know you've decided what two sides, what are you going to describe as the problem? What are you going to describe as the solution? What are you going to, or if it's two contrasting opinions, what are you going to do to differentiate them? Once you've got those two sides, make a chart, put everything on the plus side in one side, the negative side in the other side, and it'll just make your writing so much easier. My students who have done this have come back to me. I have had several people come back to me from the exam saying, thank heavens I wrote a plan. I got halfway through writing the essay and I forgot what I was going to say next. And all I had to do was look down at my notes and keep writing. And that's the key. You don't want to get halfway through your essay and stop and think and have to try and figure out what to say next. So planning is the only way to do it. All right. It's the only thing that gets you there. So next, we've got one piece left of this long exam, and that is the speaking test. It is the shortest. It is only about 11 minutes long. It is face-to-face, which is wonderful. You get to talk to an actual person, and which gives me the ability to give my absolute favorite piece of advice, which is tell me a story. Pretend you are talking. Well, hopefully by the end of this little presentation on the speaking exam, you will begin to understand that the examiner is your advocate. The examiner is there to make you able to do better and say no. And so if you make it having a conversation, just imagine you're having a conversation with me, and all I'm asking you to do is just tell me a story. Just tell me. Because if you do that, if you can throw yourself into it and just tell a story, you will use all the vocabulary and grammar that you don't even know you have. So all of the time you're listening to English, you are absorbing grammar. As I'm talking to you now, you are absorbing. experiencing grammar, which is how you learned the grammar in your first language. Nobody waited to talk until mom sat them down and said, and this is how you talk in the past. Right. We didn't do that. Okay. So let me go back to, oh, that'd be helpful if I load the, here we go. Get the PowerPoint for this one up, and we will wander through the wonders of the speaking exam. Please do make sure you keep these links, and especially my email address. If you've got any questions about this 3-week program, please do send me a note. It's been so brief, and I feel like there's so much more to say. Right. And right. So we're back into PowerPoint land. It's so exciting. The speaking exam, 11 to 14 minutes, face-to-face interview with an examiner who likes you almost as much as I do. Maybe more. The speaking test is recorded. And this is for a very specific reason. The only other person who will ever see it, it's an audio recording, first of all, and the only other person who will hear it is your second examiner. Yes, you get 2 examiners for the writing exam and for the speaking test. So if you feel like you didn't get on well with your with the examiner, there's going to be someone else marking it. So don't be afraid. But all of the examiners are your advocate. That we're all, we're all your friend. It's actually in the job description. It's what they have to do, right?